Hello, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you guys.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know,
It's
right?
starting racing.
Likewise.
this is such a joy.
Yeah, well, the honor is mine, and really appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
and for everyone who's in attendance here, this is a special treat. These three souls are amazing people that I got to meet roughly a year ago, I think, when Awakenpedia was just kind of in its early birthing stages. It still is, but kind of like, day one, close to it. And these guys have been more or less on this journey every step of the way, and are great mentors and companions along the awakening journey, and just advanced souls that have great insight and wisdom to share about the awakening journey, but anxiety as well. So looking forward to this discussion. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kim.
for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is just introduce you all to um, the retreat attendees, and I'm going to read the bios that you guys gave, and then after that we'll get going with the discussion. So, Carissa, I'm going to start with you, and I'm just going to be reading these. So, uh, Carissa, introducing Corissa Saint Laurent. Carissa is a transformational facilitator and speaker, helping leaders and business executives connect to their higher self resources. She's the founder of The Everyday Mystic, offering inner exploration and guidance in consciousness expansion, and the co-founder of Take a Trip, Change a Life, a transformational travel company. She is also a business advisor combining decades of entrepreneurial prowess, visionary leadership, and acumen to support other entrepreneurs and companies in their growth and transformation. Her mission is to light the path for others so they can light up the world and spread greater meaning, higher purpose, and true joy. Thank you, Carissa, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Introducing Marta Hobbs. Marta Hobbs is a best-selling author, soul-led entrepreneur, as well as a sought-after mentor and confidant for women in leadership and busy entrepreneurs. Drawing on her life experiences of childhood trauma, of living under communist oppression, immigration to and assimilation in the United States, successful business venture and career, as well as her healing and spiritual journeys, her mission is to help others find their own freedom. Her memoir, Unraveling, shares her path to living a heart-centered life filled with love, peace, fulfillment, purpose, joy, and rooted in a solid knowledge, foundation, and truth of her own identity, sacred and whole at its core. As the creator and teacher of soul care, a practice to slow down the body, quiet the mind, and reconnect with the soul, Marta guides others towards healing, self-discovery, and soul-led living. She is honored to partner on this venture with Four Seasons Resorts in New York City, Paris, south of France, and Miami. Marta also holds luxury retreats, reconnecting women to their authentic selves and to each other. She is proud to collaborate with Dior and Four Seasons George V on this extraordinary offering. Marta lives in Paris with her husband, Jim, and their beloved toy poodle named Daisy. She has two adult children whom she treasures more than anything else, Mira and AJ. Welcome, Marta, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, Zach. Zachary is his full name, but I call him Zach. Zach Bodenweber is a board-certified health and wellness coach, licensed social worker, and author specializing in personal transformation, human flourishing, and spiritual realization. He has over a decade of experience serving clients, training teams, consulting organizations, and developing life-changing programs that have reached thousands worldwide. Zach's mission is to spread multi-dimensional health and expand human potential by providing, teaching, and increasing access to transformational interventions that sustainably improve well-being and quality of life. His first book is titled Notes on Awakening: Remember Who You Are, Integrate Suffering, and Create Your Life. Welcome, Zach.
Thanks, Cam.
Reading bios, it's always a funny thing. But you guys have great bios, so it makes it really easy too. Yeah. So what I'd like to do before diving in, if we all can just take a moment to calm down, pause, take a breath. I got this from you, Marta, in starting our soul-led combos, and I think it helps. And I think it would be nice for us all to do, attendees included, because we've been having a very busy, amazing weekend, but very busy. It's been packed with events and talks and lots of stuff. So I'd like us all just to calm down, slow down, and take a pause, just quite literally, 10 seconds here to reset our energy so that we can focus in on this beautiful conversation that's about to transpire. Okay. Beautiful. All right, guys. Well, it's a true pleasure to be back speaking with you again in this new context. How cool is this, right?
Yeah.
It's cool to witness, to see this in fruition. And I know what will be one of many. And for everyone who's listening, tuning in here, I purposefully did not give these three any real insight or kind of guidance on what we'll be talking about today. I didn't want the mind to be able to take over as it tends to do, to rehearse and create scripts. And so they don't know any of the things I'm going to talk about or ask or, so what you'll see from them is who they are. And that's how it should be, right? That's the truth of what we're doing here. So everything's arising out of the now. It's all coming out of the present moment, which is the most heart-led, authentic, inspirational, influential way to connect and to see. And in context of spiritual awakening, the awakening journey, this is what it's all about. So let's see where it goes and how it goes. But I know whatever happens, it will be beautiful and blessed. Okay, so this retreat, it's titled Freedom from Anxiety. And of course, in order to free ourselves from anxiety, we have to first know what anxiety actually is, right? So not the Webster dictionary definition of anxiety, but from a spiritual or energetic perspective. I'd like to ask the question and to evaluate, what is anxiety? And perhaps you all can speak to this from your own experience in the awakening journey in dealing with anxiety throughout your life. That's kind of the context and framework I'd like to just come together to try to bring a consensus definition to what anxiety really is from an energy perspective. And Corissa, you mentioned in your intro the other day on Friday about how you experience anxiety growing up in various forms and contexts. So I'd like for you to kick off this question for us, if that's okay, to kind of lead the charge here on coming to see what anxiety is.
Thank you, Cam. I've sat with this a lot and obviously gone through the motions of how anxiety feels. And what I've come to know about it, just like the energy of really all things, is that anxiety is a friend and it is an ally to us. And what is it there for then? Why does it show up? Those are the questions that I started to ask anxiety. Why are you here? Because I know you're here to help me in some way. And this takes the perspective of feeling and knowing that we are in a benevolent universe, that we are protected and surrounded by love and God and the power of creation. And creation is beautiful and it's generative. And so that's a sort of going back a step one of realizing that this is the world we live in. This is the container that we're in this earthly plane. And so once we get acceptance with that, because I know that's a lot to just say, oh, okay, is that true? Is that true for you? And I can never tell anybody, oh, you got to make that true for you. It is only true for you once you know it. And that knowing is beyond belief. It's not like, oh, I believe this. Oh, yeah, I believe that. It's you know it in your core. And that knowing comes from experience of it. So knowing that, okay, anxiety, which feels like shit, it doesn't feel good. It feels scary. It feels, you sort of are untethered to your body, all sorts of scary feelings about it, but it's here for some reason. And so that was my first meeting of anxiety as a friend, to say, why are you here? And what are you showing me? What do I need to know from you? And what I heard, and I would love to hear from Marta and Zach on this, what I heard was that you need to feel. You need to feel now I'm here to tell you that you have all of these deep trapped feelings inside of you that are being ignored. And it was like the energy of anxiety was just like, ooh, this feeling of like all of these feelings that needed to be felt and needed to be therefore met and honored, processed, all of that. So anxiety is kind of like that. It's ringing the bell. It's like the fireman going like, hey! There's things that you're not experiencing, feeling, knowing, processing. So I guess once I started working with it in that way, anxiety could go away, but then I could, to handle the other things that it was alerting me to.
Yeah, trapped feelings. I think we'll get into that more, and maybe Marta or Zach can elaborate on this trapped energy too. But do you get who'd like to chime in here?
Yeah.
I'll go.
Go ahead, Marta. Please.
I feel like I have a similar thing to share, which is, if you zoom out to the bigger picture, and this panel is about spirituality, so I think we all agree that there's a little bit more to life than just this human experience. So for me, anxiety is, if I remember that there is a soul, the bigger part of who I am, but there's also a human, and it is the human that's experiencing the anxiety. It just really gives me a wider lens to look through, and also slightly bit of a distance from experiencing it in your body, which can be really, really scary, especially in the beginning. So for me, just like Corissa just mentioned, to me, anxiety is actually not a problem. Anxiety is a very normal and natural response of the human, of our bodies, of our cells, of our nervous systems to the world that we are currently living in. It's fast, it's chaotic, it's loud. We're constantly inundated with information that we have to take in and process. It is a lot. And we've sort of made it normal, but it is not a natural way for this human body to exist. And so what happens it's too much, right? So we're overstimulated, we're overtaxed, and it's too much. And so what does the body do? It starts to send up the red flags, the signs that it's stuck. It can't process, anymore. And so, like, to me, it took a while to see it as an ally, but now it's a brilliant way for my human system to let me know that, like, it needs a timeout. And so it's taking it not as a problem to fix, which I feel like a lot of people do. And it's also how I started in the beginning of my journey. I tried all the things to make it go away. And so it tremendously helped me. It was changing my relationship to anxiety and seeing it as, hey, it's just an alarm system saying I need a break. It's just too much. And so I also now can see it as a friend. It took a while to get there because initially there was so much that was stuck that I was repressing that when it all started coming up, it was extremely overwhelming and frightening. But now at this point, almost a decade into my healing journey, I can say I've learned how to listen and say, oh, okay. It's simply like an alarm system saying, take a step back, you need to rest. And then I just slow everything like way down and breathe, and then try to get to the point of, well, okay, what is the message? Like, what was out of alignment with who I actually am? Where did I say yes, where I should have said no? Where am I not honoring the truth of who I am by taking on too much?
Yeah, beautiful. Zach, I know you have something to say here too.
Yeah, plenty. I just really appreciate what both of you had shared. And Marta, something you said about acknowledging this human being, that we're embodying really touched me, because this has been coming up a lot with clients as well, where it's a paradigm shift with the way that you approach this experience of anxiety within yourself. And when you understand that being a human being, the mind's job is to protect you, keep you safe, and that's what its primary task is. And it tends to be far more concerned with that than with happiness. So the mind struggles, and the ego struggles with the inherent uncertainty of life, and will try to create certainty and predict a future that is completely imagined. And then in doing so, our creative power actually starts to be used against us, because essentially anxiety is us being afraid of our own imagination. It's like drawing a picture of a monster and being afraid of it. We are imagining and essentially creating this future that then we want to avoid, or that we're resisting when we have this experience of anxiety. And looking at that part of us with compassion and grace and love, because it's a cliche, but what we resist does persist. And when we resist this experience of anxiety, it's like, imagine a child that's afraid and trying to keep you safe and saying, oh, no, don't go in there. There's a monster in there. There's a monster in that closet. You wouldn't turn to that child and say, shut up. You wouldn't turn to that child and say, well, will you be quiet? You would reassure that child. Say, it's okay. It's all right. I understand you're afraid. I promise you there's not a monster in here. I promise you we're going to be okay. That's how you would interact with that child. And I think there's something really powerful that happens when we can interact with ourselves, that part of ourselves, in the same way. That when we're experiencing anxiety, there's a part of us that is afraid. And the task of anxiety is an attempt to keep us safe. It's an attempt to protect us. That's beautiful. That doesn't mean we have to listen to it. That doesn't mean we have to obey its commands. But we can acknowledge it and be aware of it, and understand that what's surfacing is here to be seen, felt, and heard, and give it the space to do that. And when we become aware of that process, we have a choice. We have a choice through that awareness. I'm experiencing anxiety. What is anxiety? It's this collection of thoughts I'm having and these sensations I'm experiencing in my body that are pretty much fear. Okay. Now that I'm aware of that, what am I going to do about that? What's my choice? To Marta's point, maybe sometimes that's something to listen to. Yeah, maybe there's something here actually worth taking away. Maybe there's other times where it's based on trauma and based on these past experiences when there's not actually a need or something tangible to take away from that anxiety. It's just there to be acknowledged because it comes from this place that's conditioned by our past experiences and the ways that we've been hurt. So it's just there to be heard, acknowledged, and then we do what we're going to do.
Yeah, really well said from all you guys. And I think it was a nice combination of different points, all different sides of the same coin here. But, I think one of the things I'm taking away from listening to you guys that's important for our audience to remember is that there is a distinction between genuine survival-based fear, which is what its intrinsic mechanism is designed for, to protect us, right? To protect the physical organism. But anxiety, separate from fear, is this dysfunctional, mind-made state of irrationality that's quite literally insane because it's thinking of a future that does not exist, as there's only the eternal now, as we know. So that's, important for us to remember about the distinction between fear and anxiety, and why with anxiety, it's hurting us. It's not serving us in our journey and our ascension and our healing. It's keeping us stuck and anchored in time, which we know in truth is an illusion. So, all right. I'm glad that we were able to kind of spend a few minutes here to talk about what anxiety is, right? From a spiritual, energetic perspective. And now that we understand or have a better sense of what it is, we can actually start to look at how do we free ourselves from it. And Zach, you had mentioned in your intro video that you have not experienced any anxiety symptoms for over a year and a half, which I think we all can here quite agree on is very, it's incredible. And so my question to you is, can you elaborate on your own journey and explain how you were able to dissolve anxiety to access this state of being in which you're free? So, things like, I want to take it where you like, but I'd appreciate if you comment on, the path, of course, of how you got to this point, but also mentioning some of the specific practices and inner work you've done to liberate yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely struggled with anxiety and stress for the majority of my life. And my mind, as I kind of mentioned before, sort of felt this constant need to predict and anticipate what was coming, what was next. And I lived that way for a very long time. And it's very interesting because was much more predisposed to thinking about the future than the past. The thinking about the past is never really something that's been a common direction of my mind. But thinking about the future was nearly constant. And like you said, Cam, that there was a state of tension that created because my mind was in the future, which doesn't exist. There's only right here, right now. So the future is just a thought. So my mind is somewhere else, and then I'm right here. My body's right here, and there's this tension, like you're stretching a piece of fabric that happens, and there's this disconnect and this discord and this disharmony that's felt throughout the entire body. And that was the majority of my experience. And for a long time, I thought that anxiety was necessary for me to perform well, I guess you could say. I thought that, oh, well, if I didn't think about this thing that's coming next and anticipate what's going to happen and all of that, then I'm not going to do as good of a job. I wouldn't be as prepared. It wouldn't have gone as well as it did. So I was a bit attached to that. I was a bit attached to that experience, and I thought it was actually necessary. The first split, there's two stages to my own experience with anxiety. The first, in which I was able to transcend it, but still very much experienced it, was was really that first gateway into spiritual awakening, when I became aware that I am so much more than this ego, and I'm so much more than this person. I am so much more than my mental and emotional experience. When I realized that thoughts are not truths, and when I realized, oh, this is so fascinating that I can be the witness of my experience, that I can be, I'm not my thoughts because I'm aware of them. I'm not my emotions because I'm aware of them. So who am I? I am the awareness. That understanding, that transcendence was freedom from that experience, because I was able to understand, oh, I'm so much more than this. You know, I am the witness of this experience. I'm observing this. Okay. There's a lot of freedom there. There's a ton of freedom there. And still, so I would have those thoughts and feelings, but my relationship to them totally changed, because I was able to be the witness of them and the observer of them. There's there's a second stage that happened when I got really into uh, emotional healing and emotional integration. And that's when I realized that, okay, what's surfacing within my experiences is here to be seen, felt, and heard. It's here to be integrated. It's here to be felt deeply. So that's when, because that whole transcendence thing is a little tricky, because there's freedom there, but there's also this idea of like, oh, every time I experience it, I'm almost retreating. You know, I'm almost rising above it and almost retreating into my higher self in a sense. Then I realized, though, oh, this is nothing to retreat from. This is nothing to be afraid of. This is nothing to escape. This is nothing to avoid. This is actually here to be felt. And that's when a real profound shift happened. That's sort of a second stage, because I started to, rather than avoid or be afraid of or try to prevent anxiety or any distressing feelings, I'll say, I actually started to embrace them. And in a very, very interesting way, I started to look forward to them, because I understood that they were revealing where I was not yet free. And they were giving me an opportunity to integrate where I was not yet free, where I was suffering emotionally. So that's was a second shift where, okay, when things would happen in life that would generate this experience, I was like, all right, good. Let's sit with this. Awesome. Let me feel that. Let me feel this as deeply as I can possibly feel it. And in that process of feeling it, I became free of it. In the process of avoiding it, I was enslaved. I was captured by it. But in the process of just embracing it completely, feeling every aspect of my experience of anxiety, I truly became free of it. And that happened. That wasn't a one-time thing. That happened over a period of time. But that's a completely different relationship, and it's a different way of living with that. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. It's my takeaways from just listening to you are you experienced a profound and authentic shift in consciousness that changed the way you perceived your world, which completely 180'd your sense of reality, or what you would see as reality. And then you also realized after that essential shift that your triggers are your teachers, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you lean into the discomfort. Beautiful. All right. Marta, Corissa, I'd like to open this up to you guys too. How are freeing yourself from anxiety, where do you stand right now in relationship from your freedom, in context of how free you are from anxiety, and how have you gone about doing that, accessing that level of freedom? Marta, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. I'm sitting here listening to Zach. I was almost thinking like the need for freedom from anxiety is almost something that enslaves us to begin with. You know, like there's no need for me. There's no need for freedom from anxiety, because if I need the freedom, I'm implying that I'm not already free. And so I never really, for me, unlike Zach, I was very much enslaved by my past. So I carried with me a lot of trauma, CPTSD, and I mean, a list of things based on how I was raised as a child, my teenage years, a long story, but I was functioning, solely focused on the external. So there was no internal life for me. I believed in God. I went to church. I even prayed. So there was sort of like an individual relationship with some higher power. It shifted throughout my life, but it was at, and I also, like Zach, thought that feeling, that anxious feeling, was what made me really good at what I do. I was highly functioning. I was really successful. I, advanced through my career very quickly. So it was when I hit 39 and I actually sold a business my husband and I had founded, and I retired. And I found myself in a space in life where my schedule, which was constantly filled up with calls, meetings, appointments, I was busy, and busy meant I was important, and that felt good. 2 kids, marriage. My husband was an alcoholic. So like I just was fight and flight, survival mode was like the only way of being that I knew myself as. And so at 39, after selling our business and moving to France, everything just started falling apart for me. And at to my disappointment, because I had finally reached that point where, like, wait a minute, like everyone's like, this is where it's at. Like, you're happily married, 2 kids, retired at 39, living a good life in Paris. But no, like the panic attacks started. And at the time, this was, 12, 14 years ago, it wasn't a common conversation. Depression, anxiety, panic attacks, a serious heart condition, all of it, like my body just started to give out. Looking back, I know it was like the soul knocking, like let's turn the gaze inward. But in the beginning, it was just fear, terrifying fear, and a lack of understanding of what was going on. Just that desperation to escape it, for it to be over, like sheer panic. But not just the thought of panic, I literally was like feeling it in every cell, every part of my body and my being. So it was a few years of total and complete lostness and discomfort. And then as I started learning, reading everything, doing yoga and breath work and all the things you've probably discussed today to help myself, to free myself from this horrible thing that had overtaken me, I really studied my past. And my path wasn't so much of meditation and transcendence, because I simply was unable to sit. I couldn't, if I slow down enough to witness thoughts and witness my breath, it was really, really frightening, because what I had found in those spaces of silence, stillness, and solitude was old trauma. And so for me, in order to be able to tap into that peaceful way of being that's at our core, I had to do a lot of cleanup first. And the answer for me was embodiment. And so Zach touched on that a little bit, and that is feeling, which was also scary, because initially everything that came up to the surface was terror, just terror. I grew up during the Cold War. It was tanks, it was buildings set on fire. It was feeling the fear of that 3-4-year-old that sort of witnessed that. And so for me, it was EMDR, tapping, trauma, all the trauma modalities. Talk therapy only took me so far. It really kept me stuck in the loop of thoughts. It was necessary, but that wasn't what really helped me. It was learning to sit with myself, to be fully present to myself and what my system was experiencing. So sitting with that fear, sitting in the unknown, sitting in the discomfort. And really, that is how I experience anxiety now. So like, it's just nervousness. I believe it's normal. And freedom from it, to me, is my ability to sit in the discomfort of it. So like, it doesn't feel great, but like Zach said, like, I'm here, like, it's okay. And just real tenderness, softness, and compassion. I had spent so much of my life racing and running, and just being hard, really in my masculine, getting things done, you know, so it's really softening towards myself, towards my heart, towards that little girl inside that was just terrified and scared. And so it was being in my body, you know, my body was not a safe place to be, and disconnecting from my mind, getting into the body was a really powerful process, because it taught me, you know, that as a human, if I can sit with that old fear, I can sit with anything. So like, it really, the resilience, it's an incredible thing how resilient we are as humans. Most of us don't tap into our potential, actually. And I was like, let's go. I'm going in there, and whatever monster is in that closet, like, I'm ready. And so still, that is how I choose. You know, I feel like the soul came here for a reason, to experience the human experience. And so I don't want to escape any of it by transcending it. Like, I want to fully feel and embody it. I also think that's a big thing for women. Like, I really think a lot of our healing and what we're here to do as human beings, as women, you know, we bring forth life, like we have sacred wombs. And so I for me, fully feeling all of it is the answer, fully embodying every emotion, every experience, not over identifying it. The witness thing is super important. You have to have that distance. I'm not what I'm feeling, but I have so much power when I can hold it. The deepest of pain, the highest of joys and love, and everything in between. And so I'm interested in always expanding my window of tolerance, how much I can hold. And that gives me so much power to say, like, anything in this world that comes my way, I can sit with it, because I sat with the things I was most afraid of, and here I am.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
So beautiful. You know, the echoing what you just said about being embodied is so incredibly important, because I think a lot of spiritual traditions teach transcendence and teach essentially, you know, escaping the human form, right? And ascending to those spiritual planes. And I believe this experience here is it's a blend of all of that. It's a blend of understanding that we are beings that are all those things. We are our body, we are our mind, we are the different energies we hold. We are the planet, we are the universe, we are God. And we can be all of that at once. But if we just try to escape to the higher planes, let's call them, we're not doing what we really came here to do, which is to experience the fullness of this human embodiment. So thank you, Marta, for bringing up embodiment, because that aspect of understanding myself as a spiritual being was and came later, because when you study and follow other spiritual traditions, it's not necessarily right there front and center. And it was crucial for me as well, because through and from childhood trauma, I had totally disassociated. So all of my, we'll just call them my destructive behaviors, the alcohol, the drugs, the everything that was not, I don't want to say it wasn't serving me, because it was. I mean, it was absolutely serving me at the time, but it was serving that dissociated self. And it was helping that part of me deal and handle life. And maybe I wouldn't have been and reached the point of where I didn't need them anymore had I not used them. So I'm not telling people to rush out and go, become alcoholic or anything like that, but they were useful to me in understanding that I was these separate selves and that I had this painful, dissociated aspect of me that I didn't even know what she was doing sometimes. And I have very few childhood memories, which is so strange to my husband because he has this like razor sharp memory. He can just recall stories and childhood things. And he'll be like, oh, simple stuff. Like, what did your parents make for dinner? I don't know. I can't remember. I don't have any memory of most of my childhood. And I know it's because I was dissociated most of the time. So anxiety was a way, like we were all talking about earlier, of waking me up and being like, you're way over here. You need to come back into this body. And this is the only way that we are, the guides that I believe are here for us, can do this for you, because it's going to scare the shit out of you and you're going to come back in. And so that's been my journey of understanding that, also as trying to escape the understanding of that, because I think, again, once we awaken to or become aware even of ourselves as higher self beings or ourselves as souls in a body, when we become aware of this whole structure differently than what we were maybe raised in, we still, I believe, are in a constant learning process of returning to that, remembering that, coming back to that. And so I did need to get rid of the crutches, the things that my dissociated personas needed or wanted. And it wasn't hard, because as soon as I acknowledged that dissociated self, I then didn't need those things. So I didn't have a struggle with giving up alcohol or drugs or the things that were destructive in my life, because I was operating from that higher self place and knowing that I wasn't that person that needed that thing. And then sitting, just like Marta and Zach have already so beautifully said, it's just sitting with that feeling and how scary it can be, and still being with it and knowing that I can hold this. I can actually be a container of love. I can love this experience and love this being that is going through this experience. And I can offer that, that mentorship, that even, being a shaman to yourself, you're ushering in an evolved and elevated understanding of who you are, and you get to ceremonialize your life in that way by stepping into that. It's scary as hell. It's, yes, if you have somebody else there with you, it could be even better. But there's a beautiful thing about being on your own with it. Again, not telling people to go rush out and just do this on your own, because I also believe I needed to get to a stage where I could hold that myself, where I didn't need necessarily the support. And I'm not saying I still don't need support. I absolutely do. But I also needed to 100% be there for myself. And I couldn't know and show and prove that to myself until I did it. It's like taking myself through a rite of passage and being my own guide through that. And knowing that I could do that then brings gifts that you just didn't even know were there. It brings understanding that you never had before. It brings you to a new level of consciousness. And at that level of consciousness that both have touched on already, there is no need to be free of those things. There is no thing that's not you. And you just end up getting into a place where you can start to wield your beingness, because we are playing with all the reflections, playing with all of those things and going, oh, I see I'm reflecting anxiety, or this friend is here to show me that this is my reflection, and what can I do to reflect something different? And so you start to get into that real beautiful co-creative space. But it took decades of, and I'm not saying decades of adherence to any certain one or particular practice, but riding the waves of it all. Yeah.
Marta, did you have something you wanted to say, or no?
I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
You know what I thought would be interesting is a lot of times, something Corissa said that a lot of times I can sense. So, you get to a place where you can find your own groundedness and your own, you're like, I'm good with this whole anxiety thing. But I think you will all agree with me, like, you go on a retreat and you're by yourself and you're in the woods and the world is so harmonious and peaceful. And then you re-enter society. And I feel like there's so much anxiety coming at us from other people. So that it's been such a journey for me to learn that is not mine to take on. And I feel like a big part of my own energetic boundaries and a protection of my own inner state has been the painful path of releasing people who took up important spaces in my life, but brought a lot of chaos and drama with them. Like, we can walk the path and constantly be making choices towards evolution and reaching the next level of consciousness, but that is not necessarily the case with everyone in our lives. And sometimes those are our loved ones, like my parents, for example. Like, they're almost in their 80s. There's no having this kind of discussion with them, right? So, like, how do we navigate a world where walking out on the street, like, everyone is anxious, it's coming off of everyone in really toxic and unhealthy ways? And so how do we, I feel like two things. One is I got to make sure I remain grounded and centered. I don't want to reflect love and peace everywhere I go. So, like, how do I myself stay in that space so that I can show up as that? And as Corissa said, if that's what anxiety is being reflected to me off of this person, I can now not get triggered. But it is challenging because you do have so many interactions in your everyday life where you are faced to interact with people who are just dysregulated, let's put it nicely. And it's like, how do we stay in our own lane? Because I think the tendency very often is, oh, I'm just going to tell them what the answers are. Like, here's the 3 steps. It's our paths are so in the beginning, you're like, I'm awakened, I'm going to save everyone, I have found the answer. And then you're like, okay, first of all, not everyone has the same answer. Second of all, not everyone is ready. And so it's like, how do you function when you're okay with your own anxiety within a world that's just, I feel like it's like the next pandemic. It's been here for a while. The anxiety that simply exists when you step outside the sanctuary of your home.
Yeah.
Like, how do you deal?
It's so funny. This is what's so beautiful about these conversations arising out of the now, because like it's just progressing exactly in the way that I had set the intention for, which is hilarious because like where it's moving is
Of course,
right? Yeah, divine serendipities. Because your point, Marta, is exactly what I wanted to tap into next. So let's go there. And the whole idea here is that, okay, we have an idea of what anxiety is, right? We define that to the extent possible. We have a solid idea, at least abstractly or theoretically, how to so-called free ourselves from that, right? But as you were just getting into, Marta, where the next stage of evolution for human species, like what I feel is like integrated enlightenment, right? Eckhart Tolle coined this term called awakened doing, which is essentially conscious doing. I'd like to kind of turn the conversation there, speak about this, because this is where I think the meat of the work is as well, which is, let's bring it down to earth, make it more practical, more relatable to the audience here, which is to say, it's easy for us to talk about and even to practice being free from anxiety in a vacuum, in a high vibration container like we're in right now, right? In retreat. But when we re-enter the world, which is full of ego, full of doing, in which there are so many perceived pressures, responsibilities, obligations, bills, expectations, deliverables, and time constraints, when we re-enter the noise of insanity, how do we remain anxiety-free there in that context, right? So that's the question I want to talk about now, which is most generally, how do we remain anxiety-free while doing? And Marta, I wanted to address this question to you to kick it off, because you're someone, as someone who mentors conscious entrepreneurs, and you yourself have built a billion-dollar business and brand while honoring your spiritual journey here. Can you speak to this very subtle but important question of how can we remain present and bring the being into the doing so that we do from love and not from fear?
It's taken me a long time. I just turned 50. But I work with entrepreneurs because what I see happening now so much is, in a sense, it's wonderful. There are so many young people, with the invention of the internet, everyone's like, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to burn I'm like, let's go. But the way we go about it, most of us go about it, is from the ego space. And that is the doing. And I feel like for me, my husband and I built a business and we worked all the time. We became that business, so it was just like everyone was like, oh, it's great, work for you. You set your own hours when you're an entrepreneur, and you're like, yeah, you work all the time. And it was like we lived and breathed the company. And I really think that's why it became so successful, right? So like our path was the pushing, the striving, the succeeding. And of course, at the end of it, it had to end for me the way it ended. There was burnout, there was panic, there was anxiety, depression, that whole journey, because I wasn't going along, I wasn't even aware of my anxiety, let alone working with how to free myself from it. And so I feel like, and we talked about this once before, I remember together, to me, the key and the answer is that beautiful dance between the masculine and the feminine energies that are within each one of us. And to me, the masculine, I think the goal is always a sacred union between the two internally, right, within each one of us. And so the masculine is the doing and the pursuing and the succeeding and the structure and the container, and it's necessary. But that's not the whole story. The feminine is the, compassion, it's the flow, it's the surrender, it's the receiving, it's the, like that versus the structure. And so many bright, intelligent women are functioning strictly out of their masculine to get to a certain level financially or success-wise or in their careers. And then they get there and they don't understand why they're exhausted and they're burnt down and they're resentful. And it is because they're repressing a major part of who they are, which is their feminine. And so for me, it's the doing, the masculine, and the being, the feminine. And how graceful, how effortless, and how beautiful can my flow between the two be, so that I honor both parts of who I am. I integrate them, like it's about wholeness for me. And so my work with entrepreneurs is about that. Like, yeah, go to your meetings and go get shit down. That's great. But if you're not taking the time to like rest, to receive, to flow, to nourish yourself from that deep soul level, like I can tell you where it ends, because I lived that. And so it's just kind of like running along their side, and it's like, did you eat? Did you sleep? Did you do your meditation? Did you do your yoga? Or whatever their thing is, like, don't forget to be soft with yourself. Like that masculine is so push through, get there. And the feminine in us just wants tenderness. It just wants loving. And like, we really, need to give that to ourselves. I think the best and the most successful leaders are doing their hardest work on themselves. And that then expands their capacity. Your capacity to lead yourself directly reflected in your capacity to lead an organization. It's just a mirror. And so I come alongside entrepreneurs like, let's go. If there are any issues internally with the company, it's all happening in here. Let's look at that.
Brilliant. Yep. Zach, Corissa, would you like to expand on this?
Yeah, definitely. Part of the conscious doing comes from, that's a really important word, right? The consciousness of what you're doing. And I think that speaks to the fact that so many people are unconscious in their doing and in their activities. So I think it's important to really look at that. Well, are you moving through life in a way of where you are aware of your actions, activities, your behaviors, your feelings, your thoughts, so that just bringing that awareness to everything that you do and everything that you are, bringing that consciousness to it allows you to do in a way that doesn't feel forced, right? There's power there. There's power in the doing that comes from it flowing in the way it's supposed to, rather than you trying to push a stream or a river in the direction it's not meant to go, or up in the, and it's trying to flow down and you're trying to stop it and continue to push it up. When we understand what's going on and we see and are aware of all of those aspects, we become conscious to it, then the doing can be the being in that beautiful flow, just being in that stream and going in the direction that it is going. It doesn't mean we just lay there and don't do anything. It's not that we just sit in a cave and meditate all day and visualize. It means that when we bring consciousness to the doing, it is purely awareness. And so getting into that flow state, I think has been beautifully empowering for me, having been somebody who was real type A, very, very much in my masculine as well, controlling and always trying to strategize. Right. And that will only get you so far. And as Marta beautifully pointed out, it can take you far, but then to where you don't even want to be. So being in a place of where you're in flow means that all your actions are contributing to the direction in which you're meant to go. And when I say meant to go, it is all individual. I am not meant to go where Marta's meant to go, or where Zach or you, Kim, are meant to go. We're all meant to go where we're meant to go. So becoming aware of that too is another level of understanding of self and our journeys here. Where am I meant to go? Where am I meant to use my gifts? Where am I meant to serve? And once I understand how I fit into the whole picture of things, then that doing just becomes me being. And my being and understanding who that being is on all of those levels, right? All of the planes of self and consciousness, then everything we do just becomes this extension of our being. And then we're not even, I feel like it becomes very effortless at that point. So one practical thing I can share is that I have a meeting with myself and myself every morning, and we could call this a meditation, but it's really not. It's a meeting. It's literally like I am sitting with my higher self, my different planes of my earthly self, with my guides, and I have a meeting, just like you would a business meeting, like, hey, what's going on today? What do we need to accomplish? What's how's everybody feeling? What are we looking to do? Like, what's here for us today? What am I meant to be open to and meant to do? And once I tap into that, then I can also let go of the doing, because it just starts to happen. And a lot of that is where you get into not just flow state, but in that manifesting state. And I know, there's so many discussions and ways that people manifest. That's how I relate to manifesting. That once I have that meeting and understand what's here for me, I can let go and just let it happen. And that's when everything just, it's like watching the orchestra just create beautiful music all together and going, and I'm not even the conductor. I'm not even the person like there. I am also watching that person conduct. So I feel like the more you realize, like you had said earlier, Zach, about how you become aware, and then you go, oh, I'm not those thoughts. I'm the one aware of those thoughts. And then you become aware of being aware. And then you go, oh, I'm not the one that's aware. I'm the awareness that's aware of my awareness. And then it just kind of keeps expanding and going from there. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but that would be my I guess a good practical tip that I would give everybody to meditation is beautiful, wonderful way to center and align, however you might do it. When you're in that state, make it active. Have those conversations, really bring in wisdom, and it's all here. It's all here for us. We just need to ask for it and listen, and sometimes shut up too. So I'm going to shut up now. Zachary.
Yeah, I love how you phrase that. I think that everything we do becomes imbued with the frequency with which we do it, and the task and the action and whatever it is carries that frequency, and ultimately it shows up in outcomes and results and experiences. And I think that that's a pretty practical way to look at manifestation. I'm a big believer in this in the mirror principle, and that who I am and the frequency with which I live will be reflected to me in my external world. And I think, I mean, that happens in a number of ways. Sometimes the actions we take from that place end up creating circumstances that are more peaceful, more harmonious. And maybe, like to your point, Marta, maybe it's sometimes that's having difficult conversations with people and they're no longer such a part of your life. Sometimes those people simply fade away with no action actually needed on your part. Sometimes they transform. They go through their own evolution and meet you there. And same thing with like all these different circumstances. So I really, really enjoy that. And that's something I believe deeply in. And I live a very full life with a lot that I do, and a lot that I need to remember and pay attention to. And I try to balance that with giving myself as many opportunities to be and act from pure presence as possible. And I'm on a very practical level. I have this, I use this productivity software called Sunsama, and I've been using it for 2 years. And the only reason I bring this up is because it's an interesting balance of like, that's the structure, that's the masculine. But because I have that structure, then I'm able to be fully present and fluid and more flowy within that structure. So the way I structure my days very intentionally, the way I look at those tasks and think about where they're going to go, so that when I'm doing something, I don't have to be thinking about what's next, because I have that. I release my mind from that job. so that, because I have a system for it, so that I can be fully focused and immersed in what I'm doing when I'm doing it, even if that's writing an email. You can be fully present with an email, and pretty much anything. And our senses, our sensory experience give us a beautiful portal into presence, regardless of what we're doing. What are we seeing? What are we hearing? What are we touching? What are we feeling? That is all a way that we can stay grounded, regardless of whatever the task is. And the sort of funny part about it is then those tasks usually end up happening in an even more efficient and effective manner, because they're backed by the intelligence of present moment awareness, and universal intelligence. And there's another concept that may help people here that I love, and it's this concept of being the thermostat instead of the thermometer. And Cam, this is sort of what you were bringing up earlier about how the world is, people are very anxious, and the world has a lot going on, a lot coming at us. And I love that concept of, being a thermostat is you're setting your own frequency. I take energetic responsibility over my life and over who I am and how I show up. I don't let anybody else determine that, because I know that that's my own creation. That's for me to choose. And so I set the thermostat where I want it to be. Whereas, the thermometer is very much responding to the temperature of the environment, right? That's where we go out and we're with people who are anxious. So we are anxious as well, right? Whereas the thermostat holds its temperature. And I think one of my coach trainings was in polyvagal theory. And there's this beautiful concept of co-regulation. When we're with somebody and we're regulated or they're regulated, our nervous systems begin to align. And of course that can happen in the other direction as well. But when you are rooted and grounded in that regulation, other people feel that, and the environment starts to respond to you. I was just perfect little examples. I was just visiting a friend a couple months ago, and we were sitting down, and he was just so relaxed, and he ended up falling asleep. And his wife said, I haven't seen him just fall asleep like this in years. And I think it's because you're here. It was very, very beautiful, and I felt honored by that, because I could tell that his nervous system I was helping to co-regulate his nervous system. And I know that to be true. And that's something I try to bring into all my interactions, whether they're personal or professional. So just a few things there in terms of, this anxious environment that a lot of us experience.
Awesome. Yep. Everything you guys are saying, this whole conversation, it's so brilliant. I know I can feel it. The vibration is pure. And it's just such an honor to be with you guys having this chat. I would like to open up to the group here, the wider group, to invite some questions if you guys have them. I think there's only time probably for a couple, because I want to end this session with Marta, Zach, and Corissa imparting their last wisdom with us. But let's take a couple questions, and if you guys want to get in touch with them after this, we'll share contacts, info, and stuff, of course. But yeah, if you guys have questions, maybe you can raise your hand. Maybe if you are okay with it coming off mute and speaking, otherwise writing it into the chat. And Maddie, if maybe you can just kind of look to see if the questions, where they're coming from, who's asking them. Okay. Someone has to have a question. I know that.
Hello, am I able to ask a question?
Of course.
Hi.
This is my brother, by the way.
Oh yeah. Thank you all of you guys for speaking. I thought this was really amazing, and I'm also into spirituality at a much lesser degree, just because I think I'm a little more in the real world, fortunately or unfortunately, of corporate and all that. So I'm in wealth management, and Marta, I guess this goes to you, but Zachary and Chris, you guys as well, feel free to chime in. But my question is, Marta, if you didn't go through this experience at 39, say you went through it at 18, would you be where you are today? Would you still have the motivation that you had to get to where you are now? Are you happy you went through it? Because I think sometimes people get the advice kind of, don't, be Zen, don't have anxiety, don't, all these things, but then they're already very wealthy, very successful, in a place where they can say that. There's so many people need that motivation and that drive, that masculine energy to get to be in a place where you can mentor,
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you, if you went through it at 17, would you be where you are today, or would you be, out in the woods somewhere?
Thanks for your question.
Sure.
It's all about like what your beliefs are about how the world functions, right? So for me, I get asked this a lot, like, what would I change? And it's absolutely nothing, because no, I would not be where I am today had anything happened any differently than it had. I feel like had I had a spiritual awakening at 17, I would not have the lived wisdom of what it was like to have it as a mother of two, as someone who grew and ran a company with 500 employees, who's experienced financial stresses of abundance and scarcity. So just because I believe that everything had to happen the way it did, now I'm able to mentor people from where I couldn't have gotten that, had my awakening happen at 17. So I had to live through all that trauma. It made me resilient. I don't think I would have had the motivation to push for the levels of success that I achieved in my life had I not been working from the ego, from the need to prove to everyone that I'm also better, that I can, it was this poor immigrant kid arrived in America, and a woman and a girl. I didn't speak any English. So like out of that, like I was less than, I felt, and I was not welcomed as a foreigner in New York. So like it was just, everybody was horrible. That had to have been my experience and the way I viewed the world in order for me to have this attitude of like, watch me, just watch me, so like that then allowed the massive success, which then allowed for all of it to fall apart and be like, oh shit, I can teach people how not to let it get that crazy, where they can move between the two. Even though I didn't have that luxury myself, now I can offer it to others. So in a sense, I become that mentor that I so desperately needed, but I would not have listened, because if someone came to me in my 20s, when I'm in my 20s or in my 30s, and was like, girl, let me tell you, I would not have listened. I would have told them they were crazy. I thought I knew everything. And that had to have been my path, because it was my path. And I am in full acceptance of that, regardless of how really horrible it was at a certain point in my life. So like, and that is a belief I chose for myself, because for a while I did live in victimhood. This wasn't fair. Why me? Blah, 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 blah. And then something was like, okay, you can stay hanging out in there being mad at everyone in the world and live from a place of complete disempowerment, or you can take your power back and say, fully accepting it. And then I still say, watch me, because I know I will do more amazing things, but now motivated by a totally different energy. And that is service to others versus proving to anyone, including myself, that I am worthy. Now that's an inherent thing that I live out of. And I just try to accompany others who are struggling with it.
Yeah.
That's how I answer that.
And I guess to your point where you said you wouldn't have listened to it, is that because you say your 25-year-old self would have thought, hey, this is going to slow me down in my growth. If I start taking 4 hours a day to, do yoga, do this, do that, clear my mind,
Oh,
and
I would
have that
compare.
luxury.
I would compare. I would be like, wait, how much money are you making? The person
Right.
giving me advice.
Right.
Where are you in your life? Like, who are you to give me advice? Because it was totally functioning out of the ego, and it was comparison and competition. That was my survival, right? And so, of course, I wouldn't have listened, because like, what was the qualification of that person to give me advice? I would completely dismiss it.
Right. And I think that's the problem, I think, because I know like the right answer is to have that balance, and what you're saying now. I just think so many people, especially that I work with, and you probably see this too, near space, just don't believe in the fluff.
Yeah.
They just believe in the grit, and that, the competition of America, capitalism, the
That's why,
success.
yeah, that's why a little suffering is required. Something needs to happen to break that. Somebody gets sick, somebody passes away, a company folds, and like someone gets financially ruined. There has to be this desperate moment of like, oh, I actually don't know as much as I think I do, and I would like someone to help me. And they have to choose it. If I chose to have a mentor that gave me this wise advice, I would have listened. But if someone is coming along and just like, offering this wisdom, you're like, you're not interested. So there has to be, that moment of like that breaking point that has to be there. Most people, I don't know, maybe not for everyone. That's just my experience of life so far. Most people don't go, especially when they're successful, and they don't go voluntarily. People like me, we go kicking and screaming into the awakening journey. I didn't want it. I did not want it.
Well, I really appreciate it. I think this resonates a lot with me, and I think a lot. And Zach, you too, with what you were saying, embracing anxiety instead of rejecting it and resisting it. My question to you, Zach, is: do you truly not have anxiety? In this world we're in now, you go on, you must turn on the TV. You must live in 2024 with, a World War III approaching, different things of this nature. Do you think it's like any part of it is circumstance, or do you think it's entirely, you can live in your head and be harmonious with, a different reality?
It's not living in my head, and it's not a different reality. It's my relationship to life. I really appreciate the question, because I have a relationship to life, a relationship to the news. I'm very tapped into everything that's going on. I don't live in this sort of separate space with my head in the sand or anything like that. It's my relationship to all of it, and it's seeing God's perfection in all of it, and it's releasing judgment from all of it. There's this embrace of the complete human experience, and understanding the place from which it arises, and understanding the areas of the human condition that all of that is a manifestation from, and committing to living differently and being somebody who doesn't operate within that paradigm. That's really what it's about for me. So
But
it's
let
not.
me ask you one question. I'm not trying to interrupt. Say you were in Ukraine, or say you were in, one of these countries that you literally were, had this kind of reality.
Yes.
Like, would you still be able to have that relationship of no judgment when Russians are trying to kill you and or some other country?
I don't know.
That's what I mean. It's like, sometimes I feel like circumstance is part of it. We're all comfortable in this country. We have access to fresh water. We have access to food. We have capitalism that fuels comforts, and sometimes I just struggle, because I'm with you, and I go vacillate back and forth between, what it is, my relationship with, myself and how I see the world, and everything else is a reflection of me. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. This, some parts of the world are not anything a reflection of me. It's just a reality for some people, that they have to go through. And then it just throws me into a tailspin, or,
Yeah. Understood. I feel that deeply. I would maybe invite you to consider the ways in which it is a reflection of a part of you. You know, all of this stuff, even the greatest evils in the world, live within us. You know, we all have this capacity for infinite light and infinite darkness, and I feel like I can see myself in everything, and that's not to not acknowledge the incredible pain of that experience and the pain that that has on other people. Right? It's just simply the way I choose to engage with it. Yeah.
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 Zach,
Can I
that's such a
add?
Yeah.
wow.
I'd love to add to this. Thanks for all these questions, Connor.
Hmm.
You know, I think part of my worldview and what Zach was sharing too is that participating in life in the way you choose changes the way you participate in life. And it isn't that these things aren't going on. It isn't that there is no war or that there is no poverty or that there is no suffering, but it's that your own responsibility to operate in the world from a place of love and a place of seeing and a place of consciousness allows you to bring that energy forth. And this is we are governed here by a law of balance. Everything eventually balances out here. Nature does it, political systems do it, we humans, bodies do it. It all balances out. And so what part of the balance do you want to be? What part of the balancing mechanism is how you want to contribute energetically? And that's how I see it. It's like we can be on the ledger of the balance sheet where we are stoking that fear because we're feeling the fear and we're just falling right into that fear. Or we can say, oh, there is fear and I'm not going to participate in it. There is war, but I'm going to say, completely understand what you're saying. We get to have this perspective because of where we live and because of our experiences. Absolutely. But that's what this lifetime is. We all were given a life and a set of cards, right? A game console. Okay, here's the life that you're going to have. It's going to be filled with, and then you go out and live it. So if you spend, not you, but we or me spend too much time focused on other people's games, I'm not fully operating in the best way possible, my own game, my own life. So that's the way I would look at it.
I feel that. Yeah, that's a really good perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And Connor, great questions. You know, I know we've talked about this a lot ourselves personally, but so I just went to an event with Marianne Williamson. She happened to go to Charleston, and like right on the street where I lived. It was the funny coincidence, and so I was like, okay, I gotta go. And the whole thing was about the mystic Jesus, about not from a religious perspective, but from him as a human being like us, someone that was going through this awakening journey, someone who's a human being fully realized. And one of the takeaways I had was that despite him being whipped and tortured and beaten and judged and completely, right, the whole thing, even though he wept, his joy, he never lost his joy that was being derived from his knowingness of truth, his connectedness to truth. And that's why even on the cross, nailed to the cross, he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He was seeing from realized innocent perception, not from the ego, but from the level of consciousness that is pure truth, pure awareness, right? And so it's to say, like, these people who are by circumstance in these war-torn countries, that's just what is, right? Just like Jesus, those people could be developed enough, spiritually speaking, within themselves to see it from a different level of consciousness. It's not to say that they're not in pain, but they can transcend the suffering component of that so that they can actually still be in joy. And that's why there's paradox here, right? And it's a hard thing to realize, to speak about it on the level of mind, because conceptually it makes no sense. It makes no sense. But the more that you awaken, the deeper you go in consciousness, or the higher you go, the more you start to see from Christ consciousness, from that purity of mind, that wholesomeness of mind. And you realize, like A Course in Miracles says in its first line, all that exists is forget that. Actually, funny enough, it's down here. It is. Let me just read it. You see my notes. You can't see. Hold on. Wanted to show you guys, just because it's relevant. I think here it is. What it says: nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Right? Perhaps the greatest pointer to truth. And if that's what Christ realized, and I'm not speaking religiously, so I don't want to get into that dynamic, but I'm speaking to him as a human being. And perhaps what he realized, what people in Ukraine and these countries and what's happening, these atrocities around the world, they could too realize that what's happening to them, to their families around, nothing real is actually being harmed. Nothing is actually being destroyed, right? There's transmutation of energy, but the self that you think is real is nothing more than a thought that is.
I'm gonna have to chime in here. You're speaking in terms of concepts because you've not lived in a war. And that is a natural thing to want to try to understand. But I don't think it's, it's to Connor's point, like we do live in a very comfortable society, US. I remember for me watching when the Ukraine war broke, like Corissa mentioned, like I didn't have a lot of memories. So I grew up, I was born in 74, so it was the end of the Cold War. So like tanks were rolling down my street. I remember the building across my home set on fire, like a big communist thing. So like you can look at all of this as an outsider and come to certain conclusions to sort of make sense of it in your mind in the extent of your human experience here so far. But for someone like me who's lived in it, and in no way was it as like I didn't see like blown up body parts, you know what I mean? But like the environment of war was like the beginning of my life. And there's a difference between knowing something conceptually and there's a difference in knowing something in your like physical experience, right? Like, so I think it's hard to generalize what it must be like for those people, or to say they can see that there's a way out of suffering or they can transcend it. They can't, because when you're in that state of trauma and the soul splits, you're in survival and the only thing you're stuck in is terror. Like the human physical experience is you're just in suffering, you're just in pain. I feel like for a lot of those people, the higher states of consciousness are completely inaccessible. They're just like, is my kid gonna die? My husband's missing the leg, like the terror that's out there. So like we can sit comfortably and make certain conceptual conclusions, but we're very comfortable when we do that and where we live. And so I just want to speak to that, like the human experience of what someone in a war goes through. Not saying that I did, it was like a tiny taste of it. But even from the tiny taste, like it sat in my bones, in my cells, like for so long. And that's why for me, the fear was so enormous when I started healing, triggered by then the Ukraine war breaking out, that I can't imagine, you know, when some of those kids were saved going into neighboring countries in Europe, or like the journey to come back from being so fragmented from that traumatic experience is a very long and deep journey. And some of them may not be able to get to the place of, oh, I can transcend it because it's all an illusion, and you know, like we don't really have the capacity to understand their experience because we haven't lived it ourselves. And I think like we have to remember that we can only
we can only speak from our own experience.
Of what exactly.
Yeah, and I understand your point, and it's a fair point. It's a necessary point, right? And I can only speak from, and I am speaking from my experience, right? And we've all gone through our own adversities and our own challenges. We all have our own stories, and we all have overcome our own things. Some have been in wars, some have not. It's you know, I think that's a road that's hard to go down when you're trying to compare the level of suffering that is accompanied to certain atrocities. But the point is there's suffering. And what we're doing here and what awakening is doing is transmuting suffering into peace. So the question is how? And if we make that conditional, I think we get into dangerous territory. Now, I don't want to, you know,
I don't think it's conditional. I just think it's individual.
Yeah, of course, of course. And that's why Buddha said karma is the great imponderable. We don't know why certain things happen to certain people and others are saved from that or spared from it. This is the great unknown, right? This is the mystery of our experience as a human being here on planet Earth, this floating space rock. Like, we're all trying to understand the ununderstandable. And it's a challenge, right? And this is why I think kind of the takeaway from all of this is like, because all of this makes no real sense, we have to have compassion. We have to be here for each other to support one another for whatever we're going through. Because the smallest thing that it may seem to you or to me, if like someone getting, you know, bullied or tripped or kicked or this or that, to them, their experience, the suffering of that could be astronomical, right? And who are we to say the level of suffering has to be a certain quantity, right? Based on our judgment of that suffering. So compassion is necessary for everyone, for every sentient living being, and everything's alive, which is why the more that we go on this journey, the deeper we awaken, the more we realize the suffering of one is the suffering of the one, right? With a capital O. And we're all in this together. And we all have to be here for each other, support each other, understand that there is suffering everywhere. And our only real purpose is to help people to move beyond that, move through it. And if they can't, you know, at least we can try. We can be here. And that's the purpose of what we're doing right now, right? And this retreat, Awakenpedia, coming together like this, it's all in the aim of transmuting this suffering that is part of embedded into the human experience, the human condition. And that's why Buddha says he teaches suffering and he teaches the end of suffering. And so anyway, great questions. Really appreciate that discourse. I think, you know, it's such an important topic, right? And because it brings it back into the real world, or, you know, earth dynamics, if you will. But look, it's 3:33 my time. I know we're over. Do you guys have a few more minutes? Do you want to it's okay to hang out for a bit, or do you have to hop? Because our next thing is a break. So if it's okay, I'd love to be able to just kind of keep this rolling for, you know, maybe another 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes, and can get another question in.
I can roll.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
While
Actually, sorry, no, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, while people may be thinking of questions and just to, I guess, carry on with that conversation while people might be formulating their questions, that, you know, our sharing of, you know, as light workers, way showers, healers, beings that are here coaching, doing the work, serving humanity, because we've gone through a set of experiences. We've learned from it, learned how to transcend that experience. We're now teaching it. Just because that may be where any one of us are, and I walk this path all the time of coming back to my own center and being like, what I can do is reflect me. What I can do is reflect my truth. What I can do is show up as the highest and best version of me. And if that comes out through a program or a talk or a conversation that I'm having with my son, it is me showing up as an evolving, expanded conscious being. So coming at life from that place rather than your ego of where, oh, I've learned these things and now I am on this mountain of truth and I'm going to dispel my wisdom from this mountain of truth to everybody who, below who must listen to me. No, it is that we can share, we get the honor to share our path and our experiences with those who want to walk up and have a seat with us. And that's it. It isn't about reaching everybody. It isn't about, I don't even think, relieving the suffering of all. It is about meeting people exactly where they are with exactly who we are, and that being a match energetically for there to be this magical combination of whatever ensues from there. But yeah, I think it's, I've had that time period of my life of where I was the fixer. I was out there trying to, Band-Aid everything, fix it all up, get everybody on this path, all of that. And ultimately it was a reflection back to me of my ego, that I was really trying to do this for a different reason rather than just showing up, speaking the word as you just did from another master or from yourself, showing up in the way we do and just being.
Yeah.
And in that, then the wisdom flows. And in that, the suffering may end among those who are ready for that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Indy has a question.
Right. Yeah. And I was just going to say that's why surrender is so important here. I've found in my own journey, the process of knowing I know nothing at the end of the day, right? And that's why Socrates was, he was asked, he was seen as one of the wisest man in the world at the time. And when asked, how is that the case? He said, I'm the only one who knows he knows nothing. And so the point is through surrender, we can let go of our mind, which is full of the concepts, full of the judgments, the labels, the knowingness, perceived knowingness, conceptual knowingness. And that's how we can tap into this non-conceptual knowledge of innate divine intelligence, which can then flow through us. And we extend that, which is of love, pure love, onto everything that we see, which reflects it back to us, pure beauty, divine beauty, right? And so it's by letting go of that thought that we know something, that we know, that we have the answers. Anyway, okay, Indy, thank you for being patient.
Hi.
Sorry for our tangents.
No, that's absolutely fine. I'd just like to say, I think, all three of you, thank you so much for contributing today. And my question is, if you could, obviously, all three of you have had your own life experiences, you've experienced your traumas, and you've had your experiences in life. Would you change anything about your would you have changed the outcome that you've had with regards to the learnings that you've come about from your traumas? Would you change anything about your traumas is my question. Do you wish that do you wish that things could have been different, or are you glad that you've had those traumas that have led to your awakenings, so to speak, if I can use the word awakening, because I don't know if all three of you see them as awakenings? In a nutshell, if you could answer that, all three of you. Thank you.
I wouldn't wish my experiences on anyone else, but I don't wish that they were any different for myself. And then I will relate that back. There was a question in the chat here. Do you all believe that your trauma experience have led to you living a more fulfilled life? Yes. So to me, I don't wish anything was different in my life now. That was not the case when I was younger. And I do believe my capacity to sit with my own pain directly reflects my capacity to experience love. So because I always say trauma is like a sacred doorway. And so because of it, there's a certain depth to my lived experience that would not have been there otherwise. So as crazy as it sounds, I'm grateful for all of it, all of the pain, because I think it teaches me, if I can hold that pain, my capacity for love is expanded. It's almost like, to me, it's like this proportional thing. So I'm grateful for it. Yeah. But I don't wish that you lived through that to learn the same lesson.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Like our capacity to feel the pain is our capacity to love as well, and feel the love and feel the beauty. Yeah, I feel similarly. I wouldn't change any trauma, any of the abuse, any of the hardship that I've experienced. I think that it's because of that, the suffering that I experienced, that I was compelled to find a way out of it. And it's in that journey, that finding a way out of it, that's the only reason I'm here today, and the reason I do what I do. And have some of the gifts that I've been able to develop. So I feel very similarly. I'm grateful for it all. I'm cognizant of the fact that everything had to happen exactly the way it happened for 13 billion years, for all of those experiences for me to exist and for me to have all of those experiences. I treat them as divine. And I'm deeply grateful for every aspect of it. Yeah.
Ditto. Yeah. It's hard to say what would have been, but what I will say and add to this is that through expanding into our higher consciousness realms, we can change the past, I believe. And I'll just speak for myself. I have changed the past, and I have shifted what I experienced. So we can think of this in the way of where the impact of what you experience does not need to remain, but did it have to happen that way? And it could have been another thing. Just like we were talking earlier, it could have been war for me. For me, it wasn't war. For me, it was abandonment. And, so there's different, we all have that entry point to suffering, or that entry point, or that the trauma. And I have spent time shifting the past in a way that changes the impact of that past. And so looking at it that way, it is, did it exist even? I question that sometimes. I go, did that even happen to me? It happened to a version of me, but this me here right now, that didn't happen to me. So I'm just putting this out there, not as a answer so much, Indy, to your question, but just as another thought stream to contemplate, to go, well, when we start to play with time and consciousness, there is a way of seeing life that is no longer do we even have those questions of, oh, did it need to happen? And being in that past, it's just like, oh, I can just, if it did, something did unfortunately happen, or fortunately, however we want to look at it, happen, that was traumatic, can we just shift it in a way that we don't even have to spend time in the question anymore?
So good. So
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Fascinating point, Corissa. And I've played with these dynamics myself. It's funny when you start to deal with the quantum world, which is beyond space and time. I mean, it gets interesting, the rabbit hole. I still haven't found the bottom. So
I think we need a part 2 where we get to talk about the out
Yeah.
there.
I know, right?
Yes.
Well, we will. Absolutely. You know what? Let's do this. Guys, if you have additional questions, you can share them with us, Awakenpedia team, and then we can pass them along. We can connect you with these 3 beautiful souls. But for now, I would love to end this session with each of you sharing some form of brief parting wisdom or guidance on this topic of freedom from anxiety, something that you would like everyone to take away today. Whoever would like to volunteer first can go, and we'll wrap it up.
I would say that true freedom from anxiety comes from not needing freedom from anxiety. So if you can learn to sit with the discomfort of it, feel what it feels like in your body, and not make it mean anything, not give it a story, not merge with the emotion or the sensation of it, but hold it gently like a mother holds a baby. It will pass. And then each time it comes, the more tender and slow and loving you are when it arises with it and with yourself, the less time it takes. It stays for shorter time. Like you can actually master this. So changing your relationship to anxiety is a key thing. I would say that. And breathe. And like just breathe. Feet on the ground. Bring yourself to the present moment. Feet on the ground. Feel your feet on the floor, your back on the chair. Slow everything down and breathe. Nice, slow, long breaths. And at first, if you can't do this by yourself, like Zach mentioned, find someone to co-regulate with. It took me a while. I needed someone to, I didn't know how to self-soothe. If you need a partner in that first, that's part of the process. And eventually you learn how to do that for yourself. It's holding yourself through that you will develop the ability to hold yourself through any life experience. But don't try to escape it. The minute you try to resist what's present, like getting out of the anxiety, is when it intensifies. So just can you lovingly be with the anxiety when it arises?
Hear, hear to that. You mentioned relationship to anxiety, and my parting wisdom would be to treat anxiety as all things in life as their own entities. They are energy in and of themselves. They are beings that are here for us, showing up for us. And when we know and understand this, we get to actually have a relationship with them and see this and be part of this, rather than a relationship of dominance, of where you're being dominated by anxiety, fear, depression, anything. We get to step into the relationship as a person who understands they're in a relationship and then asks of that relationship, how can we be in a better relationship? And so when you see anxiety this way, then just like all things, we get to have conversations, we get to have separateness from it, being the monster in your closet or the monster down the hall. We get to have a relationship with it because all of them they're precious. Most of these things that we fear are these beautiful, beautiful light. If you can see them energetically, they're these gorgeous emanating beings that are showing up for us. And some of them are showing up loudly, like anxiety may for you. But if we just spend some time having a conversation with it and knowing it, and that's exactly to Marta's point, being with it and allowing yourself to be with it, but it only starts to dominate when you're ignoring it. And then you try to push it away and you don't listen. That's when it's going to get louder, louder, louder. So just like a child, if you have children or if you've ever spent time with children, the more you ignore their needs, the more it's going to escalate. So we just give of ourselves to that need for that anxiety to be heard.
Yeah, it really is all about our relationship with our experience, that you two so beautifully pointed out. and you too, Cam, of course. I feel similarly that in that process of integration, when you're able to sit with it and hold it and be with it and not have the need to be free from it. So beautifully said, so like paradoxical, it's stunning. When you don't have that anymore, then it's so interesting because one, through that integration, the energetic charge of the anxiety dissipates and becomes less and less like layers kind of just shedding off. And two, sort of on this larger level, you no longer are afraid of, in other words, any aspect of your experience. I'm very cognizant that anything I fear is a feeling. It's not an outcome. It's a way I believe that outcome will make me feel. And if I'm not afraid of experiencing any feeling, then I can live without fear. Truly. So if you can have that relationship to your own emotional landscape, you can really live a life of profound inner freedom. And I think maybe a unique point I'll add to this that we've touched on in some ways, but not quite so directly, is my invitation would be to cultivate trust in yourself, trust in life, trust in the universe, trust in God, whatever that looks like to you, to cultivate trust. Because if you can develop that relationship of trusting life, then again, the anxiety doesn't really have a function. It doesn't really have a purpose. If you can live in trust, there's no need for it. You're beyond the need for protection, and you can trust every aspect of your experience. And I think a way that you could do that is to look at already all the things that are happening, all the ways that all these forces are conspiring for your favor, the way that you're supported, the way that this actually is a benevolent universe, the way that your world takes care of you, to look for that. The way that if the axial tilt of the earth was a little different, if the salinity of our oceans was a little different, if we were a little bit closer or a little bit further away from the sun, life on this earth as we know it doesn't exist. If look at your heart, which has been beating from the moment you were conceived till now. You don't have to ask for that. You don't have to earn that. You don't have to deserve that. It just happens. You don't have to think about the next breath and am I going to get oxygen from it? It's there. It's in abundance. Look at all of the ways that that life is already taking care of you. And start to really feel that and breathe into that and live from that place. And you'll start to develop this really beautiful, trusting relationship with this world. And when you live from that place, I truly believe that anxiety dissipates because it no longer has a purpose. There's no need for it. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And the only thing I'll add to end to this incredible panel here is like, when we do trust, when we do surrender, when we trust, that fear, right? The anxiety that we are convinced is going to kill us. That's the at least subconscious belief there that we can't survive it, that it will fall to our deaths. When you take that leap of faith, you realize you're not falling, you're flying. And that's, free. You're free because you're like, wow, survived that. And I really think that's the essence of that ego death. I know that's a good term. Some people resonate with it, some don't. But the point is that when you feel like your world is crumbling, your identity, your mind-made identity is collapsing, imploding in on itself, you think that's the end of you. From the ego's eyes, it is the end of you. But in truth, you realize, wow, you're still there. And then you're like, I didn't die. You realize there's no ground, right? Just as we come to realize in this journey that death itself as the end of self is an illusion, there is no ground. So if you fall, it's not falling, you're just flying and you're free. And this becomes fun, enjoyable. And yes, the anxiety dissipates. Guys, thank you so much. I mean, this was amazing. You guys are amazing. Everyone who tuned in here, do yourself a favor. Follow all of these people. Zach and Marta both have books. Buy their books. Like, just read about their journeys and their insights. It's incredible. Notes from Awakening. Sorry, I don't want to screw up the title, Zach.
Notes on Awakening.
Notes
yeah.
on Awakening and Unraveling for Marta.
Hmm.
Carissa, I don't believe you have a book, but she does have a podcast. So follow her podcast and just stay in touch with these people to the extent you can, because they can only help you in your journey, in your life, in your ascension, in your healing, in your awakening. People like Carissa, Marta, and Zach are rare. I mean, it's just rare. They're not better, but they're just of a consciousness that is still a minority in today's world. And these are the people we have to cherish. We have to help support these people to empower them so that they can reach more people like you. And so, yeah, just thank you guys for being here, for being a part of this. And I know that we'll be doing many more things like this in the future.
Thank you
Such
so
an
much.
honor. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Love you.
Love you.
All right, guys.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye-bye.